Beloved, we have come together this afternoon, both in person and online, drawn by the death of David Clark Gaynor, drawn by our desire to share our love and respect for him. We've come together to express gratitude for his life. We're here together this afternoon with perhaps mixed emotions. We have deep gratitude for David's life, but that is mixed with our sadness as we say goodbye. Today we mourn, but also let this be a time for remembering the person David was, and let this be a time for affirming and celebrating the kind of life that he lived. David died peacefully on December 30th with his family nearby after a long illness. He was 75 years old. Today, we hold especially in our hearts those closest to David, those who perhaps will miss him the most dearly. We think, of course, of his wife and partner for almost 50 years, Bernie. We think of his children, Alex and Evelyn. And we think of Evelyn's life partner, Scot West. We also hold in our hearts today David's beloved nieces, Stacey and Mahoney and Kirsten Mahoney, and his brother-in-law, Gerald Goldman, as well as other nieces, nephews, and cousins. And of course, we think of David's closest friends, many of whom are with us today, either in person or online. He was loved by very many people. What David was and what he meant to us, what he taught us, that is ours to keep forever. Our memories of David and the ways in which he touched our lives will be with us all of our days. And so we turn our hearts and our minds toward one another this day, seeking to honor and celebrate the life of one dearly loved and so recently lost. David was born in Park Slope in Brooklyn, New York, on February 19th, 1949. He lost his parents, James and Evelyn, when he was very young, and his older sister, Barbara Ann, played a big role in raising him. He and Barbara Ann were especially close. She predeceased him, as did his brother, James Jr. As a young man during the Vietnam War, David became a conscientious objector, and this brought him to Boston. He came to Boston to fulfill his conscientious objector service, and he wound up doing that in the healthcare field, which ended up inspiring him into a lifetime and a fulfilling career in that field. When his CO service concluded, he earned an MBA in hospital administration from Cornell University, and from there he settled in Massachusetts, where he lived for nearly 50 years, and most of those 50 years were shared with wife Bernie. They met in 1974. David's career in healthcare administration started with his serving as the executive director of the Joseph Smith Health Center, now the Charles River Community Health. His career ended with him serving for more than 20 years as the executive director of the Department of Orthopedics at Mass General Brigham until his retirement in 2019. David was particularly passionate about supporting young healthcare professionals who were just starting out in their careers, and through his work with the Health Career Connection, or HCC, beginning in 2000, he holds the record for the most interns hosted at Mass General Brigham and the most health careers launched through HCC, and he was rightfully very proud of this. David worked hard in his career, and the healthcare field is, of course, a very worthy calling. But his real calling was to be a loving human being. And with great humility and the whole of his heart, he was called to be an amazing father and husband and loyal friend, and truly a friend to humanity. David was passionate about supporting the arts. It began close to home as he was delighted to support his children's artistic endeavors, musically and in theatrical performances. He was also passionate about the opera and for many seasons supported the Groton Hill Music Center. I'm told that he considered himself to be a professional audience member. He also loved to watch the Red Sox and considered Fenway Park to be his other church. But really, he loved watching all of the Boston sports teams. Of course, David was a longtime member of this church, First Church Unitarian, and we miss very much both his loving and trusted presence, and of course, his efforts too. He was always quick to step up and volunteer in numerous roles, whether it was to be on the standing committee or to help out in religious education with the kids or anything. I can say that he was truly one of my very favorite people, and I've never met a finer man. Today we rejoice together that one such as David was among us. Today we are together grateful for the gift of life, grateful to be a part of the interdependent web of all existence, and grateful for the short and precious time that we are lent to each other. Together, let us recall the precious time that David was lent to us. At this time, I'd like to invite David's friend Hannah to light our chalice, as the tradition in many Unitarian Universalist congregations.
Grief is praise, because it is the natural way love honors what it misses. If we do not grieve, what we miss, we are not praising what we love. We are not praising the life we have been given in order to love. Then later on, when either of you beauty makers loses the other and the sorrow comes, then neither one of you will be at a loss for the details of grief and praise to express that miracle of having lived and loved. And you're not left without a masterful tongue to speak your loss back into the plasma of continuing life. So grief and praise make us alive.
Good afternoon. Time is funny. We've named parts of it and broken it down into easy pieces to make sense of what's happening to us, but in times like this, our calculations seem much more childlike than nature's. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Scott West, and I've been Evie's partner since 2016. We met doing a staged reading of a play at Chicago Dramatist Theater where we played scorned lovers. In fact, at one point in the play, so scorned was her character that she barged into my house and pulled a gun on me. Thankfully, nothing remotely like this has happened in our relationship. We've had some vigorous debates over what might be an appropriate bedtime, me on the generous side of 10:30, say 11, and her on the far side of midnight, but these debates have always ended peacefully. A little later that year, I asked her to be my assistant director on a piece I was directing, and she claims now that I didn't need her help. And maybe I didn't. but it was a good way to get to know her better, meeting over lunches and talking over other things during the car ride. And also I did need her help. I do need her help. We all need help when things get really real. So it's good to play and pretend and laugh a little bit with each other, so when things do get really real, you can continue to do so after. And Evie and her family reminds me of that. But before I met David and Bernie and Alex, I did have this question of, where does that energy come from? How could such an energy possibly exist? But I did learn, and shortly after I met David and Bernie for the first time, I was so surprised and astonished at how quickly I was welcomed. Total embracement. It was great for my heart. And so I have eternal thanks to Alex and Bernie and Evie and, of course, David. I have an MFA in acting. I should be able to do this, but there's no rehearsal that quite prepares you for this. I became an honorary Gaynor thanks to this family pretty quickly. But given that I'm a little older than Evie, this makes me both an older Gaynor, but also the youngest, because I've only been a part of this family for about 10 years. Like I said, time is funny. I'm only 7 years younger than my father was when he died. And I'm also the youngest of this group. I'm the baby, if you will. And so being the baby, I don't think you'll mind if I sit down and cry a little bit. There's been a lot of times where we've all sat down and cried. And for me, part of the sadness and the joy is that the time with David was both incredibly plentiful and also not enough. I was immensely glad to get to know him, David Gaynor, orphan son of Brooklyn, adopted son of Boston, although he still pronounced pizza. My partner's father, Alex's father, Bernie's partner, and by virtue of his practice of radical acceptance, my surrogate father as well. Knowing in the last 9 or so years was a gift, also far too short, and I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody here, a man of legendary kindness and humility. Every single person I know who has met him for even 5 minutes has rhapsodized about his gift of curiosity, which is one thing I want to point out today. His gift of paying attention. Gifts, it feels like we are always in short supply and sore need of. Although, in the last 6 weeks, I've been asking myself, was it a gift or was it practice? It's truly amazing for me when I consider how much David's attention made so many things so better for so many people. All the while he appeared to be doing absolutely nothing at all. It was, to me, emotional sleight of hand by the humblest magician. And he kept doing all of this while he died very, very slowly over 4 years. And then between, as you know, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve this year, he quietly and mysteriously slipped away. The last magic trick, nothing up his sleeve. Where did he go? So now Evie and I are sitting daily in a house by a lake, surrounded by trees, and we see more stars than we ever see in Chicago. And we continue to ask ourselves, where did we go? It feels like he should be here. And we walk in the woods at times with our dog who's going blind. And we remember stories of a bear out in the woods who sleeps now, but we know the bear will wake. But still, we keep the dog close. We watch for hawks. The leaves crunch under our feet. and we think about the thin place between this last year and this difficult, difficult year, the gifts we lost, and we wonder how we can possibly replace them. But the thing that I can come up with right now is practice. And time. Time is a practice. Contemplating on these things, it brought me to this piece that I had read by Henry Scott Holland called Death is Nothing at All. I've heard so many people say, it just feels like he should be here. And this, at least for me, speaks to that feeling. Death is nothing at all. Death is nothing at all. It does not count. I have only slipped away into the next room. Nothing has happened. Everything remains exactly as it was. I am I, and you are you. And the old life that we lived so fondly together is untouched, unchanged. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. So call me by the old familiar name. Speak of me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes that we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without an effort, without even the ghost of a shadow upon it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolute and unbroken continuity. So what is this death but a negligible accident? And why should I be out of mind if I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you, for an interval, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
Thank you. Our first hymn is one that's very special in our tradition. It's in the Gray Hymnal 123, Spirit of Life. The words will also be on the screens. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Please be seated.
Long time since I've been up here. My dad, David Gaynor, was a man of uncommon strength and uncommon gentleness, a man of uncommon perseverance and uncommon grace. He was as humble gets, always downplaying his own accomplishments, and always very uncomfortable as the center of attention. Typically, after suffering what to him was the supreme misfortune of having his praises sung, he would say something like, "Those were lovely words, and someday I would love to meet the person you're talking about." Well, Dad, since you're not here, we've got a few more praises to sing about you. And not only have I met the person I'm talking about today, but I was blessed to have been raised by him and to have spent countless hours in his loving and wise company. So I'm very grateful to have this one more chance to talk about my dad. It was an honor to speak about him at his 75th birthday party about a year ago, and an honor yet again to be able to say a few words at his graveside service that cold day in January. I appreciated so much everyone's thoughtful attention and response on those days, but today is very important to me because I feel I left a few things on the table last time, and not just because we were outside in 13-degree weather. At that point, it was all I had in me to simply convey a few images of the happy, relaxed, cozy times that I shared with him at home in our final years together. These images, and the warmth they conjured up for me, were very soothing in those brutally harsh days after his passing. I didn't have the bandwidth at the time to go much deeper. But now, with a little time to catch my breath and reflect more on how much my dad meant to me and all that he was and all that he represented, I want to share some of the things I liked the very most about my dad, particularly what I looked up to him for the most. Perhaps the biggest thing that I will always admire so much about my dad was his consistency. He was remarkably consistent, remarkably dependable in just about every aspect of life. Not just the grueling work schedule that he kept for decades and decades, not just the constant handling of all of life's other small and large responsibilities and demands, and not just his unfailing ability to follow through on his promises to me, my sister, and to my mom. Certainly, he met all of those marks to the degree where I genuinely can't remember a single time when I was let down or surprised that Dad wasn't able to come through for us. But it wasn't just Dad's pragmatic consistency that impressed me so much. It was his consistency of personality, of spirit, of heart, and of mind that will always inspire me. He truly was the ultimate in level-headedness in both the macro and the micro. The same thoughtful, unselfish, and measured person, not just year to year, not season to season, but even throughout the course of any given day. Imagine someone who is more or less the same guy at 6:30 a.m. on a Tuesday in the middle of January as he is at 5:30 p.m. on a Saturday in the middle of July. You've pretty much got my dad. I'm willing to bet that since he was a fellow human being, he preferred the latter to the former, but you would never know it by his attitude or by the way he treated people. If I were to talk to him to ask for help, or even just to say a casual hello or to chat at either one of those times, or at any time in between, his tone of voice, his level of interest, and willingness to set aside everything else for me would have been just about exactly the same. He was who he was, and little, if anything, ever really changed that. The other thing I always looked up to my dad for so much was his gentle, tender-hearted nature. As much as he was not an emotional guy in the volatile sense of the word, he was a very emotional guy in the feeling, compassionate sense. This is a man who could and would be brought to sniffling tears by things as simple as a heart-wrenching TV commercial that caught him off guard. He would deny this, and he definitely had the accompanying skeptical face that we all remember so fondly for those weird ads in those latter years. But did I see him cry at UNICEF commercials? You bet I did. Anyway, so just the little things. No moment of sweetness was lost on him, no matter how small. Beautiful music, and especially select operas, would really turn him into a puddle, and I simply loved this about him. I didn't get the chance to attend too many plays with him, but I know that he was liable to shed some real tears at those too, especially if my sister was part of the cast. He was as stoic gets in the face of life's greatest difficulties, a true man's man in the sense of being a providing husband and father, yet he always lived a delicately poignant, empathetic, and vulnerable emotional life. He was never afraid to show that side of himself to me, and by doing so, he taught me the meaning of true versus false strength. Whenever I stop and consider the fact that he lost his own father at the devastatingly young age of 7, it leaves me even more in awe of how he was able to develop this combination of power and sensitivity. I consider all of my own struggles with consistency, even though I had such an unbelievably great role model from the beginning and all through my young adult life, and my admiration for him only grows. While I know that his older sister, my dearly missed and beloved Aunt Barbara Ann, was a similarly sensational person with a similar heart of gold, and that she gave him her all in those vital teenage years when they were without their parents, trying to find their way in the world, I still will always wonder how my dad managed to become such an impeccably great father without having one of his own for almost his entire life. So, Dad, I want to thank you. For all the special memories, all the trips, the ball games that turned into card games in those later years, the holidays, for always encouraging me and always believing in me, for always being there to help in my times of need and to celebrate in my times of triumph, for always taking such good care of us, for your unconditional love and unwavering support. But for more than any of that, Dad, I just want to thank you for being you.
Thank you, Alex. The song we're about to sing is one that's representing the special bond between Alex and his father, David. It was one that they loved listening together, and in general loved listening together to Carole King. And so please join me in singing one of her many great songs, You've Got a Friend. And the lyrics will be on the back of your program, but also on the screens. I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
From Mary Oliver in Blackwater Woods. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this: the fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. David, my quiet, curious, generous friend, we have each been blessed and lifted by the luminous gift of your life.
I gotta follow that. Dad used to tell me, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And he used to say it just like this: Evie dear, you can do it. Well, my dad, I am the luckiest person to be your daughter. You have prepared me for everything, and now I have the opportunity to share my love for you with those who so deeply love you themselves. Lucky indeed. His last word was, hello. He opened his eyes as we stood over his hospice bed, family, friends, the nurses, and he welcomed us all into the moment with a hello. What a strength. But this was Dad. Welcoming, generous, curious about the people in his life, and also about the people brought into his life by the likes of me. Being not just an extrovert, but an extrovert who knows no bounds. Dad had to contend with welcoming everyone under the sun for things like birthday parties, sleepovers, dance recitals. The list goes on. Many of you in this room have been there for those things. And to be clear, he did not have to do this. He welcomed it. He even participated, standing backstage in our hallway outside our living room, in line with who knows how many 10-year-old girls, waiting for his entrance to some sort of dance lip sync show we were doing, wearing his costume of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle mask and a karate uniform, ready for his solo. He was a vital and treasured part of the ensemble. And he never missed his cue. He encouraged me to build friendship and community. And I feel the love today of friends that I have known since I was 5, 8, 15, 20. Friendships that span decades. Friendships that are the breath and the soul of my life. And I see the friendships of my parents, also spanning decades, providing me with so much love, support, and second parents. A lifetime later, I see just how profoundly his lesson has reached me. Cultivate friendship and your life will be better for it. What a gift. Dad always taught by example and through sharing experiences. This was how I learned the importance of theater, art, music, and I had my first interactions with creativity. We did so many things. Symphony Hall to see the Chieftains. We went to the Nutcracker, the opera at Lincoln Center, and also always to a dinner at a restaurant that was on theme with the opera's location. Very Dad. Classical CRB was always on in the gray Dodge van we had when we were kids as he carted us to practices and rehearsals. I did plays and musicals throughout school. I went to Shakespeare summer camp, and when I announced I wanted to go to college for acting, Dad was the one who took me to all my auditions. And some of those were in New York City, where he grew up. And there we spent time talking about his childhood. A rare moment, as he did not talk about himself at all. But as he told me about his long subway rides from Brooklyn to Manhattan College in the Bronx, I wondered what he studied. And that is when I learned that Dad wanted to be a poet. A poet! This was massive. A whole new person emerged from within my father, the suited healthcare administrator, Mr. Gaynor, the professional audience member. To learn he wanted to create as well was a whole new layer of understanding of Dad. And not just any kind of creating, but poetry. This thing that bears the soul so wholly and vulnerably. And suddenly I understood that from him was where my own creativity must have been born. And I had all kinds of questions, and he had all kinds of answers that I had never heard. I learned he was a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War and began to understand how he lived his life with principle and value, even when that meant taking huge risks. Dad, as it turned out, was a kid like me, with a past so very different from mine, but with hopes and dreams like mine. But without a dad to take him to colleges and encourage him to be an artist. He used to wonder how we had artist children. How could he not? I also learned that he did not think he was a very good poet. But I wonder. Dad read every play I was in, this is true, and he discussed them with me before every performance. He was insatiably curious about creating, the process, my choices, the playwright's choices, the direct, you name it. When he would come see me in shows in college or grad school or Chicago or wherever I was, he could always be found at the end of the bar afterwards, engaging one of my friends or someone from the show in a deep conversation. When my parents came into town, everybody would come out with us, wanting to be near the warmth and humor he and my mom shared and gave to everyone. He always had a million questions, but it was wonderful to be on the receiving end of his keen interest, like you were the only person that mattered in that bar, or indeed the world. Dad taught me what it means to love by showing up with consistency. I cannot remember a single performance that he was not there for, except for one, in graduate school, that I refused to let him go to. And I know for a fact he is still mad at me about this. But now, I wish he had come. Because while I may have had my feelings about it, and we all know I have many, many feelings, he would have found something interesting in it. And I wonder what we would have shared experiencing it together. And so he continues to teach me. Dad showed up to such an extent that when he retired, my partner Scot and I planned a big surprise with Mom and Alex. We were going to come from Chicago, we're going to show up at Mass General on his very last day and take him on a tour of all the spots in the city where we all held shared memories and ending in a meal at one of our favorite restaurants. And this was a very good plan, except Dad almost ruined it because he could not understand why we were not allowing him to pick us up at the airport. he had arranged his entire day, his last day of work ever, culminating a rich career in public health for which we were all enormously proud of him, in order to be sure that he would arrive on time for our flight. My poor mother eventually had to make up a lie or something, I don't know what you did, because at that point I could not even speak to him for fear of giving it away, but we did it. We truly surprised him. And then we made him wear a crown and carry a fake scepter across his beloved city. And he did it. More costumes for Dad. And we toasted him and his accomplishments just as we had hoped. And it was wonderful because Dad knew how to really enjoy, just as well as he knew how to really work. And although he still could not understand why we would not let him pick us up. But that's who he was. He never missed a chance to take care of you. Dad was a helper. Dad volunteered. Dad got the check. Dad poured you another glass of wine without you asking. Dad made sure you had what you needed. Dad planned the trip, but he made sure to plan all the things that you wanted to do. He did it all, and he did not ever complain. I hope that I am generous like him. I hope I am as curious and inquisitive and engaged. I hope I always have a love of learning and continue to drive to learn like he did, to read, to go to art museums, to listen to music, to see shows, to attend lectures. I hope I am tolerant and peaceful like he was. I hope to have gratitude like Dad and lead my life with it as he has done. I hope I always find joys in the small things and rituals of life like he did. To sit by a fire, listen to Celtic music. To roll up your sleeves, put on the rubber gloves, and wash dishes from the holiday meal, blasting the most beautiful opera arias that make you cry like he did. To bring family and friends together at the table. And I'm lucky to have an example of my mom who's so good at that. I will show up. I will show up and continue to show up, just as he always did. Thank you, Dad, for being my biggest fan, for your kindness and your decency, for raising me with unconditional love, for teaching me patience and having the patience to endure the fact that I did not learn patience while you were teaching it. For saying that you will be everywhere. For teaching me that being smart was the most important thing that I could be. For your humor, your thoughtfulness, your timing, your laughter, your throat clearing, your loud, embarrassing whistle at baseball games, your funny voices reading us Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins. For encouraging me to be big, energetic, and enthusiastic. For your sweet nature, for your courage, and for your heart. Oh, and thank you for teaching me the meaning of the word redundant by using the two words boys and dumb. That is real. I love you. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. And if I'm feeling like it's all too much, I will hear you say, Evie dear, you can do it. And when I can, it is because of you.
Thank you, Evie. Cuckoo.
thank God we had a little break after Evelyn's and before this, or else this would not be possible. But I'm Uncle's niece, Kirsten. And this is a poem called Epitaph by Merrit. When I die, give what's left to me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And cry, and when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me.
I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away.
So a small disclaimer. I did not major in theater. I'm not musical. I'm not a playwright. I remember just tuning in the day that you told people that David was, I know, that David was going to go into hospice. And when Lara made that announcement from the pulpit, she was crying and joyful at the same time. So just a fair warning, there will be tears. And if I go too fast, just throw something at me and I'll slow it. Okay. Once upon a time, there was a handsome Irish prince with long blonde hair and kind blue eyes and riches beyond measure. He met an exotic, dark-haired woman who tantalized him with mouth-watering food, heady drink, and beautiful music. They fell in love instantly and lived happily ever after. The end. But then I woke up. Slowly, I remembered that I had, in fact, met a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Irishman the night before. He was kind of cute and from a Brooklyn clan, but he was neither rich nor a prince. I, of course, was the exotic dark-haired beauty. It was my dream. But I had not plied him with food or drink. By the time I laid eyes on him, he had plied plenty of Dos Equis on his own, forgot how to get to where he was staying, and ended up sleeping on my couch. Oh, the part about falling in love instantly was true, at least for me. Right after our auspicious meeting at the El Phoenix Room in Alston, that name alone should tell you a lot, I found myself with 2 free tickets to the Boston Symphony and invited David to go. He came to my apartment for dinner before the concert. This time I really did ply him with food and drink and eventually music. And he had 2 large helpings of the best linguine with clam sauce that I ever made. Wow, you might think, it must have been love for him too. Cut to many years later when I found out that David actually hated seafood, especially clams. I knew him well enough by then to understand that it was hunger behind those helpings. Love would come later. The concert, however, was a great success because he really, really did love classical music. A few years after we married, we went back to the El Phoenix Room for a nostalgic drink before going to a fancy anniversary dinner elsewhere. The bar still lived up to its name and then some, and we didn't hang around. Although I have great clarity about how we met, the 50 years that followed are more like unconnected dots that don't reveal much until you hover over them, like when you're picking theater tickets online. Two of the best dots are the births of Evie and Alex. A source of unending joy and worry to their father. David was the chief worrier. He was a champion worrier in our family, leaving the rest of us free to do other things that, of course, would cause him worry. David always said, go with your strength. Another dot reveals our wedding, a minimalist affair, kind of romantic, very practical. A JP study, our dear friends Susan and Alan as witnesses, a glass of sherry with the JP and his wife, and then a good meal with Susan and Alan. We got married on a Thursday evening. We both went to work on Friday. We honeymooned on Saturday and Sunday. It was perfect. Click on a dot to reveal our holiday ritual of going to the revels to kick off the season. A few more dots for all the plays, concerts, operas, and baseball games. A big block of dots for fabulous trips. Rome, where we traipsed all over, finding all the sights for the scenes in the opera Tosca. Bergen, Norway, from where we cruised through the fjords and toured the Leprosy Museum. Not my idea. A gazillion cathedrals, historic synagogues, and museums wherever we traveled. Music in nearly every place we went, especially in Nova Scotia. Outdoor Shakespeare in London, a favorite cafe in Paris with the kids. Always lots of eating, responsible drinking, and lots and lots and lots of walking. And as much as he loved the traveling, I know David relished the planning of the trips nearly as much. He always said this way he got to take the trip twice. I was more than happy to let him plan. As Evie said, he always asked what I wanted to do and see, but he was so good at researching, and with his curiosity as his guide, along with Frommer's and Rick Steves, all our trips were fun, often fascinating, and always exuberantly exhausting. Sometimes David would ask me what I ever saw in him. Here's the crying part, why I loved him. My immediate answer was usually something snarky, and then I would say, I love you for your intelligence, the way you care for and love for our children, your sense of humor, all true things. But the foundation of my love for David was the respect and the care that he gave to me. I was always seen, not just as a wife and a mother, but as a whole person, warts and all. I was accepted and supported and well-loved. He might not have fallen instantly in love with me as I did with him, and needed a little nudge from his sister Barbara Ann, thank you. But when he finally saw the light, it was in full spectrum. David may have been predictable. In retrospect, I think it was one of his superpowers, but he was never boring. He was deliberate with a high chance of spontaneity. A stoic with a delightful silliness. If the kids and I were away visiting my folks, he would complain of being terrible lonely, even as he relished the peacefulness of the house. Silence was something David enjoyed and employed with equal skill. I know that one of the reasons we stayed together so long was that we could be silent together. We talked, of course, but we had long stretches of just sharing space. I believe a scene from the movie Best in Show captures our dynamic. Talking and not talking. We could not talk or talk forever and still find things to not talk about. Thank you, Jennifer Coolidge, for your uncanny insight. David often said, don't look for happiness, it will only make you miserable. I would call him a cynic, but in truth he was not, because David was not a miserable man. Rather, he had absorbed the unconditional love that his sister Barbara Ann had poured into him. He let it fill him up and nourished his own unconditional love for his family and his friends. Mark Twain wrote, "Happiness ain't a thing in itself. It's only a contrast with something that ain't pleasant." For me, David embodied this contrast. He was a serious person with a serious affinity for joy. And if he wasn't happy, he was not, as my mother used to say, unhappy. David could be a hard-nosed realist, but he was often moved to tears by music or by a live performance that resonated with him. I wished that he would have cried more when he faced his huge health battles, but he rarely did. What he did do was never give up. I know there were times when he wanted to, but if giving up meant making me, Evie, Alex, or Scot unhappy or scared, he put his own feelings or fears aside and did not give up. When he made, the decision to stop dialysis, it was not a give-up decision. Rather, it was his final act of grasping what happiness was left to him. At the end, seeing and hearing from friends and family whom he dearly loved, being sung to by the Threshold Choir, and having bologna and potato chips as his last meal brought him great joy, and I think that elusive happiness. It was his gift to himself and to us.
Responsive reading is in this book, number 727. The bread we share. The bread we share this day is sacred. Grain, gift of the earth, gives life. The friendship we share this day is sacred. All gatherings when people meet and touch, celebrate life. The laughter we share this day is sacred. Joy and sorrow that rise from love are springs of life. The stillness we share this day is sacred. In this peace is a haven for the spirit which nurtures life. For bread, for friends, for joy and sorrow, for the comfort of quietness, let us ever be grateful and caring.
Thank you, Debbie. And I think you'll all agree there was no disclaimer needed, Bernie. Those were just beautiful words. In a moment, we will have a time for open sharing. This will be a time that you'll be invited to share thoughts or memories of David that you have in your heart today. But now I'd like to invite you to join me in a time of prayer. Spirit of life, source of all, known by many names, we honor and celebrate the life of David, the lives he has touched, the legacy he leaves. We are born from mystery. We are born a miracle of the cosmos and stardust. And when we die, we are received back into the mystery. We are deeply grateful for the gift of David's life and his miraculous journey among us and beyond us, yet still with us in spirit. We each knew David at different times in his life and in different ways. At this time, I invite you to join me in a time of silent reflection, a time of silent prayer or meditation, remembering David as you knew him, and celebrating the gift of life and the gift of his life to you. Amen, and blessed be. Now is a chance if you would like to share a memory or a tribute to David. One of our deacons will come around with microphones if you are here in the sanctuary. And please hold it close to your mouth. And share your name if you're willing, and share a brief memory or tribute. If you're in the sanctuary and wish to speak, please raise your hand, and one of the deacons will be around to you. If you are with us on Zoom today and wish to speak, please raise your hand in the reactions area of Zoom, and we will have a chance for you to speak in turn. Would anyone like to share?
John and I were neighbors of the Gaynors for many years while our children were quite small. And it was a joy to watch Evie and Alex grow up, and occasionally Evie would come over and play with the little ones and chat with me about her teenage life, which was fascinating. And I will admit, I lived vicariously through that for a while. It was a shock moving to the suburbs from Somerville, and we had an alarm system installed in our home because I was worried that no one would hear me scream, because there's nothing out here in the sticks except the best neighbors in the whole wide world. And we were invited to the Gaynors for an adult New Year's Eve every year. And one way we figured out how to attend when all these teenagers were so busy having a good time themselves and couldn't babysit, was to set up the baby monitor in our home. And we would be there with Debbie and Susan and Larry and Alan. And one evening, I got very worried that the baby monitor wasn't working anymore. And David said, "Don't you worry." And he left his house and walked down the driveway, around to our driveway, into our home, and whispered in the baby monitor, "All is quiet on the Western Front." And then walked back and poured me another glass of champagne. And I think that and the incredible Moroccan chicken with dates was one of my favorite memories, not only of neighborliness and friendship, but good humor and just making the absolute most of the simplest things. So thank you, Gaynors. And we loved being your neighbors and are so glad to be here as friends. We love you very, very much.
Thank you.
I wasn't going to say anything, but she did, so I can. I've been sitting here thinking a lot about David, and I realized there's a perfect metaphor for David, and because we had a very large lawn, and David had a lawn perfectly manicured. I mean, we're talking embarrassingly so as a neighbor. And I remember pretty much, I think it was always on a Saturday, and Dave would be mowing the lawn. And he would mow the lawn so methodically. He always did it the same way. He always went in the same direction. He always reversed and went back just the way. And then there were those little things, that you can't do in parallel, that you have to switch and go perpendicular, and it doesn't look quite right, but it's the way of the world. And watching David mow the lawn was, to my mind, and I only just realized this, a beautiful metaphor for who David was, because it was consistent, it was precise, and it was patient and sort of quiet. And I used to just love. It grounded me to know that David would be out there mowing his lawn exactly the same way every weekend.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Sylvia Topp, and I met David when he first came to Children's Hospital to do his conscientious objector work, and we had a lot of fun there, making a lot of fun of J. Edgar Hoover, and I'm from Canada originally, and he was always going to report me, so it was lots of fun. So, and he lived with us for about 6 months as he was getting started in life, and we had a Seder. I don't know if it was a Passover Seder, but I remember that he did all the serving. It was wonderful to have all these people and he was serving, so it was great. And it was the first time I realized that there was so much fat in a kosher chicken. But we've kept in touch over the years, and it's been wonderful to know all of his family. They're great people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? You go there.
I just have one thing to add to Sylvia's remarks. The place where he couldn't remember where he was staying was Sylvia and her husband Arthur's place.
Hi, I'm Danny. I'm a college friend of Evie's, and we are the sort of college cohort and some of the New York City cohort. And I will say, Evie and I lived together for many years, and we became very, very close. And when we were both quite single, we it sort of felt like a marriage for some years, And I just felt so welcomed by the Gaynors. I mean, in Syracuse, first of all, when the Gaynors were coming into town, it was like, stop everything. We're going to Phoebe's, they're taking us out, it's gonna be amazing. They're coming to our shows, they're gonna care, it's gonna be amazing. And I was fortunate enough, in the end, I didn't get to come and see David in the very end, but I was fortunate enough to write a poem for him, which I sent him, which meant a lot to me, and I really, really thought about it, and I said, what are the two things that I want to boil David, what he's taught me, and I came up with two words, which are wit and generosity, and those two things really, really make me feel David. And there's one thing that I think I forgot, and it's that And I'm feeling this so much now, and I feel it with young people in the world we're living in, but what a gentleman. What a gentleman, you know? And I think he's taught me something about that. I think he's taught a lot of us about that, you know? And we need more gentlemen in this world. And so we've got one less gentleman, but he's everywhere. So I love you all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just want to say to David's family, everything that you said is exactly who he was at Mass General. I worked for David for 16 years. He was, all of the things that have been said today was what he carried through in the way he thought about patient care and what was happening to the people that were entering that hospital every day. He was the single best boss I ever had in my 44-year nursing career. And when he walked out on his last day at the surgery center that he built for the Department of Orthopedics, the entire team insisted that we play this song, Simply the Best, as he walked out the door. It was a privilege.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone from Zoom who would like to speak?
Yes, give me a moment. Ira and Gail, go ahead.
Hi. I'd like to take us back in time and listen to what... I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty after... During my first year in graduate school at Cornell University, I was studying in a library, reading an assignment on political economy, a subject I never heard of, and trying to decipher a key phrase, dialectical materialism, with no idea what any word meant. I walked over to a group of guys I knew at a nearby table and asked if any of them knew what it meant. They all shrugged their shoulders, but a couple of them pointed across the room and said, "Go ask him, he'll know." They pointed to a long-haired guy sitting alone, hunched over a book, his long, green, worn-out coat hanging from his shoulders to the floor. I had trouble believing that someone who looked like he had been sleeping on a park bench could explain dialectical materialism to me. "You mean him?" I said. "The guy with the coat that looks like military surplus from World War I?" They assured me that this guy would be able to answer my questions. I walked over to him, introduced myself, and sure enough, David was quite able to explain dialectical materialism to me. We became good friends and roommates after we graduated. David explained many things over the years, but most important, he was a great friend. A great friend. He also started dressing much better.
I only met David a few times, but there's a phrase that comes to mind from a poem I don't know the name of or the author of, but it's the phrase, "only connect." I felt like David connected really well.
By the way, I'm very happy to see Bernie and her children, and it's wonderful to see, maybe we'll see each other sometime.
Thank you.
Ira, the room thanks you and Gail. Jeff.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here and to celebrate my friend, David. Treasured my friendship with David for almost 25 years. And we first met when he welcomed me to Boston. I was a California guy coming to work in Boston at Partners Healthcare. And I actually followed David in his role as he was the executive director of Partners Radiology. And I was following in his large footsteps. And he was so kind and gentle and welcoming to me, when many people actually in the organization were much, much less so. And he made sure that I was all set up for success, and just supported me and had many conversations with me as I adjusted to the role and adjusted to Boston over the years. And we had a great friendship and treasured so many of the qualities about him that you all so eloquently mentioned, and had many, many conversations about how much he loved his children and was so proud of them, and his relationship with Bernice. Also, the part I want to just highlight today is he had when you went into his office, he had a lot of books on the bookshelf, and the one that always stood out was the biggest one. It said mentor on it, and it was about being a mentor. And he epitomized being a mentor to probably more than 20 of the Health Career Connection interns that I sent his way, over the years. And he wanted the students who were not always the best and the brightest students, although he had many of those, but he wanted the people who really could benefit from mentorship, and from the kind of opportunities and support, exposure he could provide them. And he launched the careers of so many people who are now, they're doctors, they are health executives, they're health policy people and public health leaders, people who came from the lowest income communities, who ended up going to Harvard for their graduate school work, and who now are touching the lives. They're being mentors for so many other people, and they're taking really great care of patients all over the world. And so I'm just grateful for his friendship, for the mentorship that he provided me, and to all of the other students and all the lives that he's touched through that. And his legacy will go on, and we will carry it on. And thanks to the family and David for supporting. Even when David retired, they've continued to support other college student interns to have experiences and to work and improve the health of low-income communities. So I'm proud to carry on David's legacy and to always treasure his friendship. Thank you.
Tavora.
I'm Maya.
Let's go ahead, Maya.
David is my uncle. We miss him. We're sorry we're not there. And I just wanted to say, the later years was that our grandmother, Toby, Bernice's mom, who had a different set of qualities than David. She was lovely in her own way, but a tough set of qualities.
you might have to speak up a little bit.
Wait, what? I'm sorry. So what Maya was saying is that our grandmother, so Bernice's mother, was a tough woman, a lovely woman, but a tough woman. And one of the things that we always found so endearing about David was how wonderful he was to her and how he would carry her purse everywhere. We always referred to this purse as David's purse in the end. We never saw him without it when we and it really personified what David was. He was such a gentle, and I mean, everyone said this already, but the fact that he would tote this purse around for a person who at one point in his life, I'm sure, was challenging to be around, showed her extreme amounts of love and graciousness. It was something that we just always carry with us about David and loved about David. And for me, I'm Devorah. I am Maya's sister, daughter of Jerry, who is Bernice's brother. My sort of endearing memory of David is, again, his sort of selflessness and willing to be embarrassed or whatever. It's not a profound memory, but it's a funny one. Bernice and David, who have visited me wherever I've gone in the world, which is really also always been wonderful. Bernice and David wanted to go to a beer festival, so we went, and Bernice wanted to eat some pretzels. And there was this guy selling pretzels on a necklace. And Bernice had David reach over the fence and purchase this necklace of pretzels, which he then wore around Portland for the rest of the day. Munched them off his neck for the rest of the day. Fantastic. But in all seriousness, the other thing that I really just loved about David was no matter what stage I was in my life, when I came to visit Bernice and David, whether I was in school or in between school or working, he always was just the most inquisitive, like everyone said. He wanted to know what I was doing and why, or he was willing to give advice when I was looking for jobs, but never in a way that was really, trying to insert himself into my life. He was so easy to talk to and just a wonderful person. And I miss him dearly. Thank you.
Once in a while in the fancy restaurant, he'd order a pepperoni pizza.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing and giving us yet more things to love about David. In a moment, you're going to hear a favorite song that will be performed by one of David's previous ministers here at First Church Unitarian and somebody that he very much loved, the Reverend Fred Small. And that will be followed by a benediction and a postlude. I will ask that you please remain seated during our postlude and enjoy the music. And then the family will be downstairs to greet you, where you will also have a chance to enjoy refreshments. Fred.
Good afternoon. My wife Julie and I have been together for 30 years. From time to time, one of us will describe to the other someone one of us knows but the other hasn't met. A middle-aged or older man who's intelligent, kind, honest, helpful, and reliable, and he has a twinkle in his eye. He's kind of like David Gaynor, we'll say. And the other will get it immediately. Fortunately for all of us, there are still such men to be found. They can be our neighbors, our co-workers, our friends. But there is only one original, only one David Gaynor. And we're going to miss him like crazy. Bernie asked me to sing my song, Everything Possible, because she says it embodies David's message to our kids as they grew up, and also how he moved through life. I hope you'll sing the chorus with me. I'll teach it to you when it comes around. We have cleared off the table, the leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I have told you a story and tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. So some of you know it, and some of you have never heard it before, and I'll tell you all the words to the chorus. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends around. You can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. So let's sing the chorus. You can be anybody. You can be anybody you want to. You can love. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can live by, you can gather friends that you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. Some children grow up strong and bold, while some are quiet and kind. Some race on ahead, some take it slow, some go in their own way and time. Some women love women, some men love men, some leave every label behind. You can dream all the day, never reaching the end of everything possible you'll find. Don't be rattled by names, by taunts, by games, but seek out spirits true. If you give your friends the best part of yourself, they will give the same back to you. You can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know I will love you still. You can live by yourself. You can live by yourself. You can gather friends, or you can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. The love you leave behind when you're done.
Thank you, Fred. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our benediction. It's the tradition in this congregation, if you're comfortable with it, to hold hands to the person next to you, or if you wish to touch elbows or shoulders or feet, whatever works for you, or simply hold up your hands and feel the energy between us and those who are with us online as well. Beloved, may we be gentle with ourselves and each other today and in the days to come. May we commit David Gaynor to the preciousness of memory, where he will remain with us all of our days. We leave with this benediction in the Unitarian Universalist tradition adapted from Joel Miller.
Spirit of life and love, under the vast spiral of time and space, surrounded by the simple blessings of a community of care and love, we carry these memories of our beloved David with us back to the community and life he loved. We pray for the spirit of generosity and gentle strength that David exemplified, always stepping up to do the next right thing, and for strength to speak of our lives so that each day yet to come we find more compassion, more understanding, more of the loving kindness that fills our world with joy and laughter. We pray for the courage to cherish one another so that we use our lives to heal instead of to forget, and lead ourselves to the possibility of forgiveness instead of defiance.
And we pray, giving thanks for David. His memory lives on in the great oneness, and his memory, cherished by us, dwells deeply throughout us. Spirit of love and life, source of all, beloved oneness, remind us to love life as fully as we are able. Remind us to treasure our friends and families as David treasured his. Thank you, David, for your life. Blessed be, and amen. Please be seated. Thanks, Fred. Thank you, Molly. Please join us downstairs for visiting and refreshments.
For all of our Zoom visitors, I'm going to leave this channel open. You're welcome.